Hi, my name is Morten Elvang. Tomorrow is a big day, going to Stockholm to present about collaborative lean portfolio management for the speed of innovation, and really looking forward. As per tradition, here is a dry run trial recording of my presentation, which I hope you will enjoy as much as I have enjoyed making it. When you talk about innovation, it's important to create ambition and room for innovation. And in this context, I see the strategy to be the holder of the ambition and the portfolio to be the thing that creates room to meet that ambition. And in that sense, from a portfolio perspective, the connection to the strategy, executing the strategy, becomes an ongoing conversation, intent from the strategy, contribution from the execution. So in this presentation, I hope to wake your appetite for a bit more, and I'll actually let you meet some of my friends. The only thing you will not meet in the rest of the presentations is rainbows and unicorns. But other than that, I want to talk about the challenge with portfolio management. I want to indicate how you can supercharge innovation by freeing up more capacity for it. Some conversation about what do you need to do? Do you need to be the smartest or the fastest? And what does it actually mean to have speed under different conditions? Then I will talk about something I call the alignment paradox. I will introduce you to the three things you need to do well, which are the flight checks of the collaborative lean portfolio management approach. And basically the three things are to be very clear about where you're heading, to make sure you have the muscle to get there, and make sure that as you go along, that where you want to go and where you're actually going reconcile well and align with each other. But let's come back to that. The reason why you want to be very clear on your position is that you want to be able to spot emergence as it happens, so that you can stay on strategy. And then in the end, I have a small exercise for you, which I hope you will play along with. Portfolio management, in a way, is a bit special, or strategy execution is another word for it. If you do it really well, it will make life a lot easier in your organization. This idea plays on inherent simplicity from Eliyahu Goldratt, who said basically that in any complex system you can find simple things that if you do them better, it will also make you do other things better. And I believe that the three portfolio flight checks are exactly of that nature. It also works the other way around, that if you don't do them well, it will actually be very hard to compensate locally in any other part of the system. It basically means that not doing portfolio management well will make everybody suffer from that. And the interesting thing about portfolio management is that it's an area that we are happy with and then yet not so happy. So typical answers you get to questions like how important is portfolio management, you will get the answer, yes, it's very important. Is it something you can get better at? Yes. Do you know how to get better? Well, actually tried a lot, so yes, but not sure exactly what we need to do to get to where we really would like to go. And no, we are not really happy with it at the moment, even if it kind of works. So you get the situation that, well, you kind of learn to live with what you're doing. You would like to make it better, but you're not sure exactly how to do that. And for the things you tried, maybe they worked a little, maybe they worked a lot, but there is still room to do more. Then let's have a bit of a look at what's the potential we talk about here. I mean, how much can we improve things? So I have for a while been collecting numbers to just give some idea of what's the potential impact you could do by working on a certain dimension. One of the more interesting ones is the one about toxicity. So McKinsey published numbers to say that about 60% of negative workplace outcomes can be traced directly to toxic behavior. So that's a 50% impact potential for you right there. If you can weed out toxic behavior, you will do significantly better on a number of dimensions. And two dimensions I feel are particularly interesting is the productivity, the overall outcome of what you're doing, and the well-being of people working there. And for sure, eliminating toxic behavior will have a positive impact on them both. Then there's the good old overload, the fact that more organizations die from indigestion than starvation, something that Don Reinerson for many years has helped us find out how to better manage work in progress, queue lengths, having the right lead times, etc. All of that. It has a huge lean aspect to it. But what we basically know is that the more you can have a balanced load in the organization, the faster you will be able to do things. And for a lot of organizations, there is actually a 50% impact potential right there. Then a new kid on the block is about internal coordination. Well, we have kind of known for many years that bureaucracy is a bit of an issue. Gary Hamel has been talking about that for the last 30 years, if not more, that productivity gains in the world are eaten up by increases in bureaucracy, so it's like a system in perfect balance. However, last year Accenture published numbers that within the next 5 years about 80% of manual work for the typical US worker can be either automated or augmented. Deloitte in Denmark published similar figures just a few weeks ago. So there is a significant bite to be chewed of the work that we normally do, which is very much around coordination and the more bureaucratic side of things. So another 50% impact potential for you right there. And there are more. You can find quite a lot of these. For example, it still is a publicly known fact that about half of all software developed never really get used by the end user, etc., etc., etc. And this is what we are talking about. So we would like to make some changes where you have less waste like this and can free up more capacity and more engagement from people to actually do innovation. And remember from previously, it's the job of the strategy to point out where innovation is needed. It's the job of the portfolio to create the room for that innovation to happen. Here's a quote which you might remember as coming from Darwin, but actually he was not the one who said it first. I was reminded just a few days ago. But basically the famous quote says that it's not the strongest of species that survive nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. And in our context, it makes a bit interesting to discuss what do we actually mean by speed? What is innovation? And where I would like to get to is what is more important, the drive for value or staying alive, avoiding to end up in potentially fatal scenarios that would make sure that you will not have another chance to innovate anymore. And to look at that question, let's have a look at the different conditions under which you want speed and innovation. So you have the sunny day scenario, blue sky on the mountaintop, everything is crystal clear and you can see as far as you want in the horizon. There's nothing between you and what you want to do except the hard work that you plan to pull in. It's the perfect world for divide and conquer and meeting your goals and aspirations. Then there are more rocky rides, if not wet rides, or even confusing situations where it's not so clear how to get to where you want. And maybe you want to fare with more caution. Maybe you want to go a bit slower and explore more options as you go along. Simple example from Finland that I just visited is that in the winter, if you know that the ice is rock solid, you can skate like a rocket. But if you are suddenly finding yourself on unknown ice or thin ice, and you're not really sure if the ice can carry you, then you probably want to proceed with a bit more caution and explore what is the best place to put the next foot down so that you don't plunge in and get uncomfortably wet and cold. So playing on this idea, looking first at the simple scenario for strategy execution. The typical challenge in strategy execution is to align strategy and execution. That's basically the definition of strategy execution. To have a strategy, to do your work and make sure that one is connected to the other. And there's a bit of a dilemma because it's actually quite a lot of people in the normal workplace who doesn't really know what the strategy is, and still they are happily being busy every day. And one dilemma could be that it's so simple and so obvious what you need to do that you don't even need a strategy. Let's then have a look at the complex situation where you are not so sure what happens next. So what actually happens here is that the context, the landscape becomes more important. You want to navigate, you want to avoid putting yourself into potentially fatal situations. You still want to achieve your aspirations and deliver your strategy, but what happens here and now becomes much more important and actually guides even what you ultimately want from the strategy. And I need to mention that this figure is not exactly accepted by the emergent strategy community, but we are negotiating about it. And so far, what I really like about it is that it explains the shift of gravity from strategy being the dominating part to the execution being the dominating part and reversely informing the strategy. And in that sense, you can also talk about the dance between strategy and execution, where one is informing the other. And what is the most important objective is to stay on strategy so that you can change that strategy when more favorable options present themselves. And you can tease a bit and say that the dilemma here is that things get so complex that you do not really need a strategy. So strategy is something that you need to make an effort to make sure that it's part of the equation. Another important thing I wanted to land with this slide is the thing called the alignment paradox, which means that in the complex scenario where you're not sure how to proceed, it's important to be aligned, not to make strategy connect to execution only, but also that if you need to change, then being aligned, being reconciled, means that you can orchestrate coordinated pivots from one direction to another across the entire organization, something that becomes very complicated, if not complex, if you are not having that alignment. So portfolio management, all about aligning strategy to execution and staying aligned when things emerge and you need to change direction. So protecting that alignment, which is what we call the alignment paradox. So in that sense, if you remember from the first page, it becomes a bit of a conversation or a dance between where you want to go and where you actually see yourself going, where rather than driving for value, which is in itself important, it's even more important that you stay aligned so you can change to more favorable options when the need to do that emerges. So the three things you need to do really well under these conditions, and I call them flight checks because they are kind of navigational, is that you want to make sure you know where you're heading. You want to make sure that for the ambition you put up for yourself, that you have the muscle and whatever is needed to get there. We call that build fitness. And then you need to know as you go along that the steps you take are aligned with the direction you're heading. And if that stops to be true and you find that you're no longer on strategy, you got to change either one or the other to stay aligned and be able to navigate when the need arises. It might sound a little bit complicated, but actually for most organizations it's not difficult to get started. The difficulty is not in the action. The difficulty is in wanting the action and seeing this as something that has a potential upside for you. So here are three examples of things you can do to get started. The first one in the top left is about picking up your strategies. Most organizations has more than one: sustainability, manufacturing, well-being at work, all of that. And asking yourself, okay, so with these strategies as our overarching ambitions, What does it actually mean for operational guidance? Can we express a set of objectives and key results that we can use to guide our execution? This is in itself an interesting exercise, because quite often you will find that you need to go back and revise each of those underlying strategies for more clarity, so that you can actually give the operational guidance. To the right, important conversation: do you have a useful collaborative structure? Can this organization even collaborate? What does that mean? How will you look to check for that? How are you doing against those criteria? This becomes the beginning of the fitness for purpose conversation. Do we have the team we need to deliver the strategy we have taken on for ourselves? And then the last thing is the alignment contribution, meaning alignment of contribution, meaning that it's the ongoing activity where you look at what you're doing, you look at where you want to go, and you ask yourself, are those two still connected? Are you still on strategy, or do you need to make some changes to come back on strategy, either by changing the strategy or by pulling the action in the direction of the strategy? The reason why this is important is that only when you have a clear perspective of where you are and where you're heading, you can actually see what's changing around you. We call this emergent events. So it's very important to be aligned, and it's also very important that you have like open and broad involvement of people in the organization, so that information can pass unfiltered from where it's observed to where it matters the most. The different types of events that you can see are of three different types. The bubbles, which are basically internal, meaning that you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, probably have been for a while, but it's becoming increasingly clear, kind of in a boily frog kind of way, that this scenario is no longer favorable. It's taken too long. We could buy this cheaper in town, or the people who are on it are not really up to the job, all of that. So also a bit of the emperor's new clothes type of scenario. You kind of know it, but you haven't quite concluded that this cannot continue. Then there are the sudden shifts. They may be internal, external, things that happens often with unintended bad consequences. Supplier cannot fulfill an order, logistics are not working, a machine breaks in manufacturing, all of that. You've got to act to get out of it. And then the last one is more on the positive side. So that's actually about new opportunity. Suddenly you see something like a green rabbit jumping around in the office, and you want to explore and find out what does it actually mean. Should you explore this opportunity at the price of some of the other activities you have going on at the moment? Being able to act on emergence is what is in line with Darwin's survival of the fittest in the modern organizations. Avoidance becomes more important than drive for value. So you really want to set up yourself in a way that you are fit to be able to change when things are changing. So stay on strategy with an open approach as things emerge is probably, and in my view, the best you can do for relevant speed of innovation. Like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Move like a butterfly, sting like a bee is what Muhammad Ali said, alluding to resilience and delivering impact as an organization. And with high degrees of freedom and still strong coordination, then actually it becomes not one bee, but it becomes a swarm of bees, or a tidal wave, as David Marquet is talking about in Turning the Ship Around. And only the sky will be the limit for what you can achieve in an organization like that. Passing the ball a bit to you. Let's imagine this. So you're going home from Stockholm, sitting in the airport lounge. You meet your old strategy professor from university. You both have an interest in open and emergent approaches, the types of things we have been talking about in this presentation. You talk about the situation in your company where the atmosphere is a bit toxic at the moment. Too many things in flight, leaders lack transparency, people are frustrated, little gets done. Not a super nice situation, it cannot go on. And you both know that doing a few things a little different could make a big difference. what kind of conversation would you have around this? What would you wish for being able to do when getting back to home? Please take a few minutes, discuss with the person next to you, who is your dear strategy professor from the university. You are the lead of portfolio management or strategy in the large organization where you come from. Please have a talk. What did you learn in this presentation? What else have you learned in this conference? What would you like to do different when you come home? And after a few minutes, we will just ask a few of you to share what you talked about, and then we will wrap up. So takeaways for now: avoidance is becoming more important than doing the right things. Fitness is something that you cannot buy. You've got to work on your team all the time, that it can carry the strategy and is ready to observe and see when things are changing and act on those changes. Anything you can do to reduce toxicity, load, and overhead coordination will have a positive impact, freeing up time and bandwidth for innovation. And for the things I showed to you, they are not actually big things. Any organization can get started in just a few weeks, if not days, if you decide to take this on. It's basically doing what you already do, but in a different way, centered around the flight checks that we talked about earlier. So why not give it a chance? In this context, probably the build fitness is the absolutely most important of the 3 flight checks, making sure that you have the right team, the right people to carry the strategy. And except for the rainbow and the unicorn, all of these other babies played a role in the story. Thank you for listening.